Good evening and welcome to all who have joined us live or are viewing on our YouTube channel. I am Dr. Heidi Oliver Ogilvie, and facilitating this session with me tonight are Dr. Zipporah Miller and Mrs. Kathy Steen. We are all from the Division of Professional Growth and Development. Also with us this evening is Mr. Bob Mosier, our Chief Communications Officer. I'd like our audience to know that we have some dignitaries with us this evening who are listening to our session. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the presence of Board of Education Vice President Dana Schalheim, Board Member Michelle Kirkadell, Superintendent of Schools Dr. George Arlotto, Deputy Superintendent Monique Jackson. We would like to begin by thanking you for investing your time with us this evening. Your feedback is invaluable. Anne Arundel County Public Schools is hosting a series of virtual listening tours to garner information from parents, students, employees, and community members about how instruction and other aspects of school operations should look as plans continue to be formulated for the 2021-2022 school year. A few weeks ago, our superintendent, Dr. George Arlotto, communicated his desire to hear input from all stakeholders regarding our thoughts on how instruction should look as we move forward. He is seeking our collective ideas regarding the possibilities that are ahead as we consider how to adapt the technological advances to in-person learning, and also how we best help students overcome the disrupted education of the past year. Let us take a few moments to hear some words from our superintendent.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for being here for this session of our listening tour. A little more than a year ago, our collective world was turned upside down. The COVID-19 pandemic struck education suddenly and fiercely, and it changed the educational landscape forever. What we've collectively done over the last year plus is something of which we should all be very proud. There are those who say we've moved too slow, others say we've moved too fast. But together, we have reinvented education in our county and, to the best of our ability and within the ongoing restrictions, done everything we could for every one of our students. Every single person in our school community, even when they have disagreed, has played a part in that, and I want to thank you. We stand on the edge of a new frontier now. In several short months, a new school year will be upon us. The questions for us are simple. How will we best utilize both the challenges and the successes of this pandemic to create better opportunities for our students in September? How will we best help them overcome disrupted education? And how will we make our classrooms better next fall than they were in March of 2020? We'll continue to focus on equity and access. All means all, with no exceptions. We will continue to focus on building relationships, on social and emotional wellness, on teaching and learning, and on maintaining rigor. In the fall, we'll be bringing students back 5 days a week for in-person learning. We are discussing limited all-virtual options for students who will most benefit from them, but we are not planning any kind of hybrid instruction in the next school year. With that said, where do we go from here? We want your ideas. How do we best harness technology moving forward? What kinds of creative scheduling can we employ to assist our students? What have we done that you would like us to continue or to modify? What didn't work? What ideas haven't you heard discussed that you want us to know about? I'm absolutely confident that the plan we build moving forward will result in educational experiences better than the ones we have left more than a year ago. We need your help, your ideas, your input to do that. We are truly better together, and I thank you in advance for the critical insight you will provide in this discussion.
As we provide feedback, let us consider how might we create learning spaces across our district that center and prioritize high-quality learning for students and adults, social and emotional wellness, diversity, equity, belonging, and social justice. How might we explore and understand what it means to thrive at school and at work? How might we use all the best practices implemented during at-home and hybrid learning? How might we eliminate practices that are antiquated or inequitable? How might we examine data to see opportunities for innovation, accountability, and improvement? And lastly, how might we create hope and action to see amazing outcomes for all? We will now begin with the public comment section. During this time, you will have the opportunity to during this time, we will hear from our public. Our first speaker is Mrs. Carrie Cleveland. But first, I'd like you to know that you have the opportunity to submit written feedback on a feedback form on our website. The website address is AACPS. I'm sorry, can you go back to the previous slide? Written comments can be submitted to aacps.org/listening tour. My apologies. We'll talk about 4 areas: social emotional learning, equity, teaching and learning, schedules, and resources. First up, we're going to unpack social emotional learning. The definition of social emotional learning Anne Arundel County uses is from the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning, also known as CASEL. The definition is the process through which children and adults acquire and effectively apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. We will now hear from our first speaker. I'd just like to apologize in advance. Some of the names are new for me, and I will do my best. I also welcome correction. Our first speaker is Mrs. Carrie Cleveland.
Dr. Ogilvie, neither Ms. Cleveland nor Ms. Bowler, who had signed up for social emotional learning, are currently signed in. If they come in later, we will hear from them.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Again, I'd like to invite you to share any of your feedback or comments for us using our feedback form, and that form is on our website. The next segment is focused on equity. Anne Arundel County Public Schools uses the definition for equity from the Maryland State Department of Education. The definition reads as follows: granting every student access to the opportunities, resources, and educational rigor they need throughout their educational career to maximize academic success and social and emotional well-being, and viewing each student's individual characteristics as valuable. Our first speaker for this section is Lakeisha Thelusma.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Equitable practice in the classroom is pivotal. This starts with, but is not limited to, ensuring that Black and Brown children see themselves in every facet of the school day. Oftentimes, standard curricula is mostly majority white and leaves out representation of Black and Brown students, with a few filler faces here and there. This needs to change, as school is often where the foundation of building value and a child's identity begins. I've had the opportunity to review teachers' daily lesson plans to ensure that everything from books read, videos shown, and print and digital materials displayed are inclusive of Black and Brown children and not offensive to any particular ethnic group. I believe this should be common practice in every single classroom in Anne Arundel County, and more daily lesson accountability is necessary and is the only way to ensure equitable practice in every classroom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Next, we will hear from Michael Bargman.
Dr. Ogilvie, Mr. Bargman is also not yet signed in.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Mosier. The next segment addresses teaching and learning. Anne Arundel County Public Schools designed a research-based framework known as the Teaching and Learning Cycle. This document provides us with a common language and vision around effective instruction. The framework outlines practices in the following areas: planning for learning, teaching for learning, and assessing for learning. We have 4 speakers that are registered for this section. Our first speaker is Daryl Presley.
Well, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening regarding teaching and learning. I have just a really brief comment and then a question. I am, along with my wife and my children, this is our first year with Anne Arundel County Public Schools. It's been a great experience, although we are in some trying and challenging times. Hebron Herman Elementary School has been great, from the principal to the staff, and so we are appreciative of them for the work that they've been doing in what we know is a challenging time. One of the questions that I had was in regards to teaching and learning. I was hoping to get some feedback at some point before the end of the school year in regards to the Board of Education's last decision regarding the reasonably flexible consideration recommended distancing practices listed in the CDC guidelines. For example, the board's decision sets an expectation for the superintendent to prioritize in-person learning needs while employing creative approaches to COVID-19 safety. That will result, as the press release said, in more students in classrooms. Given these directives, my questions are, will there be precautions, accommodations, and/or safety protocols in place for students who have respiratory conditions, such as severe asthma and other underlying health conditions? I'm very appreciative of the speaking engagements that you have for the community, because I'm hopeful that over the next few weeks, we will have detailed information regarding the teaching and learning environments for our students. So families like ours who have children with underlying conditions can make informed decisions for the school year. So again, thank you for this opportunity to discuss teaching and learning. We appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your question. Next, we will hear from Molly DePasquale.
Good evening. I'm excited to speak to you tonight as a parent of two Anne Arundel County students, a career educator, and a national assessment and curriculum expert. I keep hearing about pandemic-related learning loss, and I want to make sure we don't use this idea to make excuses for our poor student outcomes. While there are many variables that influence students' learning this year, how we spent our instructional time was very much within the district's control. The district created a curriculum and required teachers to use it lockstep in our elementaries. While I was facilitating my children's at-home learning, I observed lessons that were, quite frankly, a total waste of time. As an educator, I was able to fill the gaps I observed myself. I used high-quality free resources like CKLA and Zern, but I recognize a lot of our kids don't have parents at home who have this specialized knowledge. I observed 3 main issues. Our early literacy curriculum was random and scattershot. It contradicts the findings of the National Reading Panel. One day kids are learning about rhyming words, the next day digraphs, with no opportunity to practice with decodable texts. Across the county, our kids did not learn to read this year. And it's not because of COVID, but because we didn't teach them. A huge amount of time is spent on computers, having them teach our kids. Many of the sites gamify learning, which isn't in and of itself problematic, especially when the lessons are used to reinforce learning. But when these video games are relied on to bridge critical gaps between grade level content and prerequisite skills, or as interventions, this is problematic. There's no evidence base to suggest that they are effective for this purpose. How we measure and communicate about student performance, it makes no sense to parents or to me as a seasoned educator. Students can be receiving straight A's while the results from their assessments like iReady and Dibbles indicate they are performing well below their peers nationally. My first grader is getting really great grades, especially in math, but his iReady score is lower this spring than it was this fall, indicating he unlearns things.
Time has expired.
As we get back to normal, I do want to urge a couple things. I want us to look seriously at our curriculum. Consider an external audit of your materials to make sure they align to the science of reading. Avoid easy solutions like computerized interventions. Instead, invest in high dosage tutoring. Give our seasoned educators more flexibility to make adjustments to support their diverse learners. And look to external experts or similar districts for solutions instead of relying on half-baked homegrown solutions.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Dawn Hudson.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Dawn Hudson. I'm a mom of a 2nd and 4th grader in Broadneck Elementary and also a 6th grader in Magathie Middle. I want to thank you for taking this time for this listening tour to get feedback. I appreciate that, and I'm thrilled that we have a chance to share ideas. I'm going to speak in bullet points just to try to get through a lot of information the best I can. I want to start kind of piggybacking off our last speaker in the sense that our K through 2nd, even 3rd grade learners really need hands-on instruction. They have been on the computer screens way too much. They've lost that hands-on instruction of how many of them learn in center time, in media, having books read to them in small group. iReady, I feel, is the worst thing we've ever done in our learning. There's no way of interpreting the data and the score, and it's just a gamified computer-driven program. I want my teachers reading to my children. I want them writing with paper and pencil. My 2nd graders still can't write well. We haven't held a pencil in over 14 months. They're constantly on these computer screens. They need to be in small groups, learning, having the teacher read to them, working together to collaborate as small teams to come up with ideas. Middle school, there was no transition from 5th grade to 6th grade. My 6th grader started and he had no idea how to communicate with multiple teachers, how to email a teacher to get a response back to them. They're in 5th grade and from middle school to 9th grade needs to be some transition instructions for them. How do I manage multiple classes? How do I email a teacher? How do I check for notifications if we're going to keep using Google Classroom or some form of that? How do I navigate just organizing myself? They've lost organization skills, so I really hope some of those resources will focus on those transitions from the next level, from elementary to the secondary level, because I'm sorry, but our children were lost in 6th grade and they did not have writing instruction. I had to teach my child how to write well. They get no feedback from their teachers other than you need to work on details. And that is not an appropriate intervention. There needs to be more one-on-one time with those students to really learn how to form writing. I'm happy to help, but I'm not the expert. Our teachers are. Those are the people that I want really working on that with my student versus an assessment test. They spend way too much time on assessment tests and less time one-on-one with our students, and that's the learning that they need to have back in that classroom.
Your time has expired.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all that you guys are doing to allow us to share ideas, and I hope everyone has a good evening.
Thank you. Our fourth and final speaker is Peggy Williams.
Ms. Williams, you're muted. You appear to be unmuted now. Go ahead, please. Dr. Ogilvie, I'm not sure what the issue is there. How about if we move forward and I will get a hold of Ms. Williams and we'll figure this out.
Perfect. Okay. The final segment where we will address tonight is scheduling and resources. We have 4 speakers for this section as well. Our first speaker is Jeffrey Kelly.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Kelly. I'm in Arnold. I'm an AACPS alumnus, father, and husband. Thanks for taking the time to solicit input for this next year as we move forward. One of the things I want to talk about was, depending on what next year looks like, there may be a need for more midday monitors and other staff members so that teachers can have time to take time to eat and to take care of personal hygiene. As it is now, it's inadequate to have staff members and other teachers regularly cover those issues because those individuals have their own responsibilities to take care of. But most importantly, I'd ask that you take the time to reconnect with your teachers. It seems a lot of that was lost this year. I'm a trained observer, and one of the observations that I made is that teachers seem to be bearing the brunt of the blame for the slow and incomplete reopening process. And even if it's not intended that way, that's certainly how they feel. That's their perception. It doesn't help when there are newspaper headlines as recently as last week that are nearly explicitly fingering the teachers as putting their own needs ahead of those of the students. That's simply something that's not true. I think back over a decade ago to my wife's first year of teaching, and something I had to get used to was her long 10-hour days at the building, followed by her evenings doing lesson planning and any kind of grading that she had to catch up on. And this year has simply been magnitudes of order worse. We've had way too many strings of 12-hour days, including work into the evenings after the kids go to bed, and work on the weekends and weekend nights. Except this is time spent rewriting lesson plans, making recordings for the students that won't be available to be live, and then throughout the week, delivering those live. And this lack of boundary has really been costly. It distresses the teachers and those that love and support them. So I don't have a solution to the challenges that the teachers and other staff experienced this year, but I simply ask that you take the time to show your teachers through your actions that you support them and cherish their work. They need it, and so do we. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from Laurie.
Dr. Ogilvie, I think we have Ms. Williams now. Could we go back to her, please?
Sure. So we're going to transition back to our section on teaching and learning and hear from Mrs. Williams.
Ms. Williams, you're unmuted. Go ahead, please. So perhaps I spoke too soon. I guess we can go back to the speaker. Ms. Byrne Rice is not signed in, so Ms.
Laurie Smith. So we'll hear from Laurie Smith.
Hi. So this year was the first year that Severna Park High had a nest block, or I don't know, they call it a Bruin block, a Panther hour, whatever, that time in the middle of the day when kids could go for extra help and do clubs. And it was fantastic. I have a high schooler and she said it was amazing. Severna Park has refused to implement that in the past, and I would love if that could be required at all high schools, just because people think, oh, the kids don't need it, they're whatever, they have transportation or they have their own cars. Not true. Our kids need this too. So please implement that for all high schools. For resources, I'm really concerned about what's going to be expected of our teachers as far as differentiated lessons next year. Some kids really didn't do well at all this year, barely grasping anything, but are still being pushed up a grade. Some kids mastered all topics easily and more. The teachers really can't be expected to differentiate that much content to a classroom. It's unfair to the kids who need catch-up work, as they're going to feel overwhelmed by their peers running ahead. And it's really unfair also to the kids who are ready to move on to grade level and above grade level work. You really have to make sure you're not just playing catch up for everybody, but also helping the kids continue who were able to master it. Remember to elevate all kids. I also ask that parents who request their child repeat a grade be allowed to do so. I know in past years that's been a sticky point, and AACPS doesn't really want to do that. They want to promote the kids, but this year more than ever, I think if a parent feels their kid needs to repeat, they should be allowed. Maybe something like a pre-first grade, like St. Martin's in the Field used to do, might be a great option for kids who finished kindergarten, aren't quite ready for first grade, but maybe didn't master kindergarten well enough. So those kind of creative solutions might be great. For high schoolers, I feel that teachers should not be in AP and honors classes, should not be expected to do any catch-up work. Those kids are taking on that challenge and they should be ready for it. And that's a lot. Those are hard curriculums and those kids should be ready to jump in. To that end, some might be over their heads, and I'd like to see extended the drop window. It's usually just the first week of school to change a class, and it's too hard is never a reason. So I'd like to see that actually be a reason this year for a kid to drop down a level when they realize it's really not a good fit this year. Again, kids coming back to the classroom is going to be very different. So please extend that window. And
your time has expired.
Also, more programs like Bridge to Algebra would be awesome. Get the kids away from these computers. They're on them way too much. It's not good for any of them. And for the virtual school, please utilize as many existing state programs and classes for the limited medical necessary kids in that virtual academy, so you can use precious resources to help out the majority of the kids in the in-person classroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mosier, would you like me to finish this section or move on with Mrs. Williams? I'm not sure if her audio is okay.
Ms. Restaino is not signed in. So I'm hoping we have Ms. Williams ready to go. So Ms. Williams, if you can hear us, you can speak.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Third time's the charm.
Okay. Thank you for allowing me to provide feedback. In the last year, I have two children in the Severna Park cluster. In the last year, between overhearing my children's virtual lessons while I telework nearby, endless emails coming from AACPS and their support of social justice and diversity programs, and seeing the experiences of other parents across the country, I've come to learn what critical race theory is. Wanting to understand it better, I tried to read the book White Fragility, but could not finish even the first chapter because I quickly realized CRT was racism, disguised as anti-racism. It disturbs me that my children are being taught that America is a racist country overrun with white supremacy rather than a place where anyone can excel no matter the color of their skin. Their lessons seem to spend an inordinate amount of time teaching that people in society have different roles and capabilities based on their skin color rather than based on their character and determination to excel. They're being taught an alternate version of reality, that systemic racism is a real thing when it isn't. All this is just a part of a larger agenda meant to take away individual thought and to control the minds and actions of many, our kids. It's not AACPS's job to teach my kids to be social justice warriors, to ultimately go out in the streets with raised fists and dressed in black bloc. My hope for the school year beginning in fall of 2021 is that AACPS stops politicizing its curriculum and focuses on math, reading, writing, English, and science without either overt or covert references to all the ways people can be divided. Lastly, my kids need to learn in a free environment with an unobstructed flow of oxygen. The mask mandate has been removed in other places, so take these masks off our kids. At this point, it's political theater. AACPS needs to stop making our kids political pawns in this Marxist agenda of control and hiding their individualism behind these masks. Thank you.
Thank you. If no one else has signed in, that concludes our public comment for this evening. We would like to thank you again for participating in the listening tour. Please take time to provide additional comments using the feedback form located on our website at aacps.org/listening tour.